Drink. You're like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. Like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. You're like water when I'm thirsty. Drink.
Good night and welcome to Water for the Thirsty. My name is Jared. I'm your facilitator host. What is Water for the Thirsty? It's a forum to share the delight of daily communion with Christ. What that simply means is we follow a reading plan. We read every week because we want to get to know better and actually read the entire word, not just bits and pieces of it. So it's taking us through the Bible in a year. And then we meet every first and third Friday to talk about the things that we've read, the things that we liked, the things that we didn't like, the things that we didn't understand, the things that blessed us, the things that are changing us. With us tonight, our usual crew, Sharika, who keeps us honest, Shonice, who makes sure we don't stray too far to the left, Kenrick, who ushers us towards the left, Randy, who actually was supposed to be another lefty, but he happens to be on this side now with Shonice, making sure we don't stay too far left.
Really?
Good job.
Yeah, you've changed it up.
Bill Clinton.
You swung that way.
Yeah, so he's
philosophy into
That's interesting.
and then we also have my dad, who is the older head, who gives us a little bit more wisdom, but he gives us that real wisdom and a non always in the church perspective. That I think is very valuable. Shonice brings that as well, but she's married to a pastor, so don't really count. It's kind of invalidated.
It's kind of canceled out.
Canceled out.
With us tonight, a special guest, we have Mrs. Mytonia Newman, My New Cuisine. Shout out to My New Cuisine. You're looking for healthy vegetarian food. That's a lady you need to talk to. My New Cuisine, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter,
Everywhere.
hashtag, we all there. I don't have a mic on right now. Also with us is Naeem Newman. I don't like the whole titles thing, but he's a doctor.
Do the doctor thing.
He's a doctor.
You paid a lot of money for that.
Naeem is just fine.
But I'm sure he likes Naeem just fine as well.
Just fine.
But I will also add that he's an elder. He's actually the first elder of his church.
You're an elder too.
So Naeem and Mytonia are with us today. It's the first time we have a couple on with us.
No, it's not.
No, it's not.
We never had a couple.
Yes, we have. We have, what you call it?
Oh yeah, my bad. Trinity and
Yeah,
Darren.
they're watching now.
Look at that.
Trinity and Darren were on.
Y'all weren't forgettable.
No, they,
Finish, Jared. Finish.
right. So we're about to get in today. Mytonia told me that she had an issue on her heart. Mytonia, tell us about what you came up with in the readings. What stood out to you? What impacted you? What you wrestled with? Something. Tell me what about the reading.
Well, we're excited to be here tonight, but we were reading a lot this week about Corinthians, and something that stuck out to me is Corinthians 8.
No, hold on a second. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, right where we are right now, our conversation is probably going to come out of Judges and Joshua, well, at least the first two chapters of Judges, because we hit that today, but mostly Joshua, Judges, and 1 Corinthians. I think we're up to chapter 10 today.
No Psalms, right?
Chapter 11. I don't anticipate that anybody will bring a reading out of the Psalms, but we're also in the Psalms, and we've read up to the 70s of the Psalms.
Psalms.
That's just a context of where our conversation is coming from. That's where we are. Go ahead, Mike.
Beautiful poetry. Beautiful poetry.
And Kenrick only reads one column.
No. I read two this time.
Oh, nice.
Cameron wrote notes. You took notes?
I took notes. It was good.
Oh man, that's good.
Let me see those notes.
No. We want to hear what you have. Freestyle on top of the dome.
So yes, where they were asking Paul about meat eating and meat that was offered up to the idols.
Where are you right now?
1 Corinthians 8.
All right.
And this week they were having week of prayer at my kids' school, and they would go for hours just asking the preacher these specific questions. Can we have a tattoo? Can we do this? Should we go to the movies? Like the whole week of prayer was consumed by these questions. And I felt like the preacher was just kind of overwhelmed with making sure he had the right answer for these young people. And then it kind of struck me when I was reading this that I use the Message Bible. That interpretation is okay if I read that one.
We all have various versions here.
Okay. We sometimes tend to think that we know all we need to know to answer these kinds of questions. But
Hold on.
Which verse?
What verse?
that's 3.
Okay.
But sometimes our humble hearts can help us more than our proud minds. And if you move down to 7,
That was
I know.
Oh, I'm sorry.
quick.
I'm kind of confused.
1 Corinthians.
First
Corinthians.
Oh, but it's the message.
Yeah.
It's the Message.
verse-
Wow, that's really different from what I
Yeah,
had.
that's about
Yeah, that's the message, does it?
That's really different, man.
And for verse 7 it says, I know that and you know that, but knowing isn't everything. If it becomes everything, some people end up as know-it-alls who treat others as know-nothings. And he had to just tread so softly this week, coming across as a know-it-all to these young people. He didn't really have a lot of the answers. They were kind of hung up on these specific issues. And I thought he did an awesome thing where he kind of talked like Paul said. Don't worry about the specifics of the tattoo, the movies, the this and that. But if you think of itself saying, I want to live my fullest life for God, mindful of those people around me looking at me, then you'll think more of, I don't want to do anything to confuse them or misrepresent the gospel, which off balances you wanting to do something for your own flesh. And in him saying that, the kids kind of got it. Like, it's not about these specific questions. It's at the end of the day, am I giving God enough glory with these things that other people looking onto me will want to know and do more? So I felt like with him not even being a part of reading Water for the Thirsty, he was right on target to what I was reading on how he was referring to the answers for those kids this week.
That's what's up.
Did Deuce or Maya ask about a tattoo?
It's clear.
What
He
happens
was
in
Maya.
school stays in school.
Sharika, I remember you telling me 1 Corinthians chapter 8 didn't hit you as warm and fuzzy as it did for Mytonia.
It didn't.
You're not the only
So
one.
we all reading the same thing and it's impacting us different ways. Tell us a little bit more about 1 Corinthians 8 and how it impacted you.
I mean, Pablo's being Pablo, right? And I liked Pablo from the beginning. Now I don't like Pablo anymore. I'm back to not liking him.
Me too.
He was cool before. But anyway, it's towards the end of the chapter. So I think it's chapter 8 is where I want to start. 8, verse 8. Food will not condemn us to God. We are no worse off if we do not eat, or no better off if we do. But take care that this right of yours does not somehow become a stumbling block to the weak. For if anyone sees you who have knowledge eating in an idol temple, will he not be encouraged if his conscience is weak to eat and offer to idols? And so by your knowledge this weak person is destroyed, the brother for whom Christ died. Thus sinning against your brothers and wounding your conscience when it's weak, when you sin against Christ. Therefore, if food makes your brother stumble, I will never eat meat, lest I take my brother stumble. So the reason why it bothered me is because as Adventists, we're all about health. The health message. Some of us think it'll save us. And I was having a conversation with my mother. And I was telling her a really in-depth story. And I mentioned, the person, drank a Sprite. And she was like, "But we eat Sprite? Adventist people drink Sprite?" And I was like, "Ma, I've told you this whole story and you're
And all you
stuck
can do?
on the Sprite." But this person was a born Adventist. I would never think a born Adventist. It was Pepsi, but I don't know if the person is listening. So now you done told the person the whole story. But anyway, moving forward.
Wow.
It was about the fact that she missed the whole point of the story and was like, a born Adventist should not be drinking Pepsi, and was like, well, I can't believe their parents would actually give them Pepsi, so on and so forth. And I'm like, where did we pick up this bad habit? And it's not the first time either, because I've told her I've eat something and she'll be like, Lord God, and she'll go on and on and on and on. And I'm just like, this clearly says, the food's not going to condemn you. It's not going to make it bad or good. But in the same breath, I got to watch what I eat for the next man, which I don't necessarily know if I agree with either. It's kind of like, I got to live for you too, Kendrick.
But the eating
You're your
tra-
brother's keeper.
That's why I have Yannick.
this, I think we get this twisted up. This wasn't just about food.
Of course it
This is
wasn't.
about a specific kind of food in a specific context. And so we're back at context. What does the context tell us about this? And so this is talking about a specific set of practices people had. not eating any food. That's not what Paul was talking about. So when we look at it that way, we begin to say, okay, so this is talking about a ritual. He's saying, don't take part in a ritual that someone else may think is part of a ritual. If you're not part of the ritual, don't do it. And they may look at you and say, look, he's eating the food that they offered to idols. He's a part of the ritual. Mm-hmm. It's not. It has nothing to do with food. It's about.
I wasn't taking the food in the literal.
No. I'm just saying. Like, a lot of times when I hear people talk about this, and it kind of tweaked what I was saying with the Pepsi. What you were saying with the Pepsi made sense to my brain. But this is always about how do we present God to people?
Yes, how we worship Him.
How do we worship God? How do I present God? You were talking earlier about oh man, my brain just about how to present God to people. They're, the kids are saying, well, can I do this? Can I do that? They're wanting a binary conversation, and it's not binary. It has nothing to do with that. It's about, do you know God? Do you want other people to know Him too? And if you do, how do you treat them so they get to know Him through you? That's it.
But in the same breath, though, as Adventist people, we do hold on to some traditions like it is you're getting to know God. So, for example, I might see you doing something that has nothing to do with my salvation whatsoever. It is a tradition we picked up somewhere along the way, probably West Indian in my case. And it's just harsh, and someone will believe that that's a part of the journey, or that's a mandatory piece of the acceptance rule, and just like in the story, it was like, that is not, this is irrelevant to the whole entire story. This is irrelevant to how God is. This is irrelevant to whatever, I know, for example, in my church at home, I can't show my sleeve. Like, there's no sleeve dress. That's not what we do in the house of God. This is irrelevant, So how do we break this habit? We have a habit, and it needs to be broken. I mean, I'm being honest. When I came to RPC and I saw no sleeve, I said, "Boy, these people right."
But in the beginning, well, a little farther up, Paul comes out and talks about how even eating to the idols wasn't a big deal.
Right.
Like he went ahead and said,
right.
If you don't think that idols exist or ghosts exist or whatever, then it's not really that big of a deal. So he kind of removes it at that point, and then comes back and says, but understand that if you're dealing with some people who do make it a big deal, you may want to consider not doing it.
Yeah. And it's not saying forever. It's saying who's watching you. If we look at Romans 14.
We're reading Corinthians. Okay.
Can I refer with the Bible? You want me to use another book and another author?
It was just kind of show me.
Okay. So when you go to Romans 14, and it says, "Except him whose faith is weak." I'm starting from the beginning.
Okay.
"Except him whose faith is weak, without passing judgment on disputable matters. One man's faith allows him to eat everything, but another whose faith is weak, only vegetables." Now, some people want to play that into meat eaters and vegetarians, but it's not. It's not. It's about, if I see you eating that meat that was offered to that God, I think that you're worshiping that God, and that it might be okay to worship that God. We try to change it up because we're into the health message, so we want it to be, okay, see, you're weak because you're vegetarian. No, it has nothing to do with what you eat. It's
you're speaking to this specific text.
No, I'm bringing it all. No, I'm bringing it all together.
I don't know if I'm there yet, but go ahead.
I'm bringing it all together.
Listening.
And so, more or less, it's saying, except him whose faith is weak, without passing judgment on disputable matters. And then it says, the man who eats everything must not look down on him who does not, and the man who does not eat everything must not condemn the man who does, for God has accepted him. And more or less it's saying, we like to pass judgment. We like to pass judgment and not look at the fact of who are we talking to. If I just came to church, and it's not the concept of just me. If you saw me go into a bar, and I'm just like, oh, don't worry about it, mind your business, then it's the same concept. What are you going?
Are you a believer or a non-believer?
I'm a believer. You're just new to the faith. You're still weak in your faith.
I'm asking because I have a setup. I just want to know.
I'm a believer.
Mm-hmm.
You are weak in the faith. You just came in. You
So
don't
yes.
know.
So
you
you're
don't know
actually
the
a believer.
You don't know the difference. You don't know what I went in there for. You don't know what I'm doing in there. Strip joint, bar, whatever you want to call it. I go in, and you see me go in. I come out, and you say to me, "Oh, what were you doing there?" And I say, "Mind your business, or don't worry about it." Instead of saying, "Oh, you know what? I realize it doesn't look right," and you try to talk to your brother to make sure they understand that you aren't doing something wrong, so that their faith is not shaken, because you never know. They might say, "Oh, if that brother cheat on his wife, then I can't stay faithful because I'm looking up to him." And it's an awful burden that some of us have for certain things, but it's true.
Question though, how do we this is something that people do a lot of. We get into catastrophic thinking, like it's a logical fallacy. It's a logical fallacy to say, because if I come out of a place, and if someone from church is there, and if they see me, and if they have that problem, we're making a lot of assumptions, even in the analogy. But we do this and we act as if this is real. The idea is not necessarily, I can't go to this place because this person is going to see me.
No,
that can never be it, because that doesn't even make sense. That's not even a. It's not even a. We're assuming for people a lot of the time. That even in that, I don't know if is what I'm saying making sense.
I understand, but I clarified mine. Whereas I went into there anyway, but once I realized the weaker brother, just like if they see me eating food to the idols,
I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying.
Listen, those idols, they're nothing. They're just sticks.
Right.
These people worship them. They offer them to them. I'm hungry. I just ate it. I know who the real God is. I'm supposed to explain that to you. I'm not supposed to be like, "Oh, you think I'm worshiping them? Mind your business." You know,
I understand
and that's what we have to do as Christians. We have to take the initiative to make sure the weaker brother who's looking at us isn't falling.
Okay. I think I figured out what I was trying to say. This is one of the issues I think that we're always going to struggle with in church, is reading something that was designed for a specific time and thing and purpose, and then cross-referencing because the words seem the same and the concept seems the same, and we're like, okay, these two things go together, and they don't. They're two different concepts. They're two different situations that he's talking about. These guys, he's writing to people he knows. You know, I don't know. I was thinking about Jesus today, and I'm just talking about the reality of Christian walk. He healed people, and he would go through villages and no one was sick. He would go through, imagine somebody going through suburban and no one's sick. He did that. And the people of the time were attracted to that because it was something they'd never seen before. And they came to him, they were like, "Yo, you're doing stuff we've never seen before." But my point is that in our minds, we can't even conceive of that as being a real activity or a real happening. It doesn't make sense to us because we don't allow ourselves to think about God in the way that says he's involved with everything. He's a part of all of it. And when you look at, for example, the idea of trying not to judge, or do I eat the meat or do I not eat the meat? And Jesus is like, the whole idea is when you know someone, if I'm helping someone in my life, if I'm helping my neighbor fix his car, and every day I come over to his house and I help him fix his car, and I finally fix his car, he's going to want to hear what I have to say. I don't have to convince him. I don't have to argue with him. I don't have to bring him in and show him pictures and scare him and be like, "Oh, it's going to go." Jesus made it so simple by coming as a human being and touching people's lives. He did that. We can be philosophical about everything we say and do and have these highfalutin concepts, but if it's not a real thing, we waste our time even here.
No, but bringing it back to what
Does this
Sharika
make
said.
sense?
Yes, it makes sense.
That makes sense.
But I'm not clear because I thought I understood Sharika's question, but I'm not. I don't know if we touched the answer to the question. There's a principle that I thought I saw in here, but I'm not sure I'm hearing anymore. That if what I'm doing, because this is the way the New Living Translation sees it, but you must be careful so that your freedom does not cause others with weaker conscience to stumble. Now, I understand that this is for this specific context, but this seems like a broader principle that he's explaining in relation, that he's pulling out of this specific instance. But we must be careful so that our freedom does not cause those with weaker conscience to stumble. For if others see you with your superior knowledge, eating in the temple of an idol, whatever, action A, which is eating in an idol, or we could put something else in it, won't they be encouraged to violate their conscience by eating food that's been offered to the idol? So basically, this is suggesting, and I'm thinking out loud here, if I'm doing it and I say there's nothing wrong with it, but they feel bothered by it, they might decide, well, if he could do it, then it's okay for me to do it. Yes?
With the wrong
with
mindset.
the wrong, yes, and that's what I was
wrong
going to say,
mindset.
because the Bible, I can't remember which verse we talked about it a few weeks ago, but if you violate your own conscience as far as what you believe God has called for you to do, then that in itself is sin.
Yeah.
So if you're so it's not even that eating the meat is wrong. They're saying if you believe that it's wrong,
Right.
and you still do it because you see someone else doing it,
Or
you've
you
caused
still-
them to fall.
Or you still do because you want to do it for whatever reason.
That's not what they're saying, though. They're saying if you eat it because you see someone else eating it.
But the principle, I think, is still for the stronger Christian.
No, it is for the
opposite.
no, it is for the
Yeah,
it is for the stronger.
it's
He's
flipped.
talking to the stronger.
Yeah.
But what he's still saying is that weaker person still violated. You're causing that person
You
to
caused
sin,
them to violate.
even though
You
what
didn't
you're
sin.
doing isn't sinning. Does that make sense?
Yes.
What makes a stronger Christian a stronger Christian?
Good question.
A strong
Superior
relationship.
knowledge in parentheses.
No, a strong relationship
Is
with
that-
God, not
which is
superior
based-
knowledge.
He put superior knowledge in parentheses.
which
So that's
is
why-
based on what?
A relationship.
Other
No,
people's
No, it's someone else.
Listen.
They're
We
selfish.
grow in grace and
No.
the knowledge of the Lord Jesus Christ. How does Paul start out this text? Talking about knowledge, which you brought up. He said, now concerning things offered to idols. We know we all have knowledge. Then he goes to verse 4. Therefore, concerning the eating of things offered to idols, we know that an idol is nothing in the world.
Yes.
He has a spiritual enlightenment that the weaker brother who has not matured in the word does not yet have. So therefore, he doesn't feel a condemnation or a guilt trip over eating things offered to idols. Yet, because he has that spiritual maturity and he's free to do it, he recognizes there are those who are not quite there yet. And just because I have it and I'm free to do it, I have to be. Well, let's look at verse 2. He said, no, in verse 1, he says, knowledge puffs up, but love edifies. Like you said, mind your own business. You know, you don't know what you're talking about anyway. Or because of my love for you and my concern for you, I'm going to show you a different way.
Or explain it to you.
Yes. Getting back to what Randy brought up earlier about the contextual situation. Corinth was a very pagan city. The church was made primarily of Gentiles. All around the place were pagan temples.
Right.
Part of their worship experience was offering meat offered to idols. And as you brought up earlier, if I see a mature Christian doing it, and I know he knows more than I know, then it must be okay. Or I'm convicted that it's not okay, and even though he do it, but now if I do it, there's a conviction in me that it's not quite right. He's saying that if we know this and we are mature, we should act in a different way toward those who are less mature in the word and in their relationship with God. Why? Not because we are free to act as we please, but because of our love for that brother.
So that takes us back to what you were saying earlier, where I don't know, but I still think, and I still wonder about I wonder about his use of argument, because we're talking about assuming a lot about someone else's experience.
No, this is not about an assumption. He's saying
If
that-
No, it's an
that's why I brought you back to Romans, to let you
Right.
know that we know the difference. We know that our children are watching us, right? So if I am an adult and I take, I don't even know an example because I don't want to
Weed.
go too extreme. And I
Drink.
A drink.
Oh, and I drink alcohol. And my children are just like, wait a minute, didn't God say not to do that? Didn't God say? And so now I'm not supposed to say, you know what, you're not to be heard, just to be seen, and just blow them away. I'm supposed to say, open up the Bible and say,
And see where
this
he did
is
not
where,
say that.
this is what you're reading. No, this is what you're reading. Where you're reading it where it says not to. I'm reading it where it says this is okay. And so you're explaining something to someone who has seen you do it. And then because they're not really settled, you don't do it in front of them anymore.
But Randy, I'm gonna get back to what you said.
That makes sense.
About the assumption. Just looking at the text in itself.
It's
Now,
on camera.
in verse 1, it says, now concerning
1
things
Corinthians,
offered, 1 Corinthians 8. I'm staying in the text. Now concerning things offered to idols, we know we all have knowledge. Verse 4, therefore concerning the eating of things offered to idols, we know. Verse 7, however, there is not in everyone that knowledge.
Yes.
Now, I'm glad you went back, because I went back to the King James and the New King James, and that is more clear than anything else I've read on it. Even I read the English Standard Version, and I read it, I was like, I think I was tired. I was like, okay, I kept going.
Yeah.
But hearing it in this,
In
what he just read makes the most sense to me.
Yeah.
What version?
Absolutely, that was the this is
James.
I read it.
the New King James.
New King James.
Yeah. And bringing it back to what
Thank
Sharika
you.
did
That
not
was
like
cool.
about it, it's not an absolute complete change of your life because in every single aspect because there are other people watching you.
That was my point. My point was simply, for example, let's use the alcohol for a second. Have a drink of alcohol. Technically, we don't have to go into this, but it's not wrong. There's nothing wrong with it. And I choose not to drink it in front of Naeem because he doesn't know any better. When I educate him, can he now drink it? Is that what we're saying? So while he's ignorant, he doesn't drink it. But then when I educate him, here, have a glass. Is that what I'm saying?
Are we talking about levels like what are the Scientologists? We keep going up levels.
Or it might still be, Naeem, here, I can drink this because I'm this, but you are the first elder of the church. You can't be drinking here, and this is where it says, and this is where it says that because what I'm saying is for some people the Bible does say some people give him a drink. It says give. You see he's messed up. Not just he can drink it. No, give him a drink because he's messed up. He's bugging out.
It still seems like we're missing the principle. I'm sorry.
No, I'm trying to stay with the principle. Yes, you're right. But the main thing is now for me, do I take a drink and be like, yo, hit the rum because now we all, but not everything is for everyone.
Hold on, I didn't even say.
Well, I think the principle is simple. I think Jared was bringing it out is we just have to be aware of what we do because others are watching. And I think that is pretty much the simple principle that it's saying is really you just have to be aware of what you're doing because others are watching.
Yes, yes. And we agree. What we're saying is it's not as easily done as said because sometimes you're just like, I need to live my life and everybody looking at me, that's not working. You know what I mean? Like if I came up, someone else can walk up. If I put my hoops in my ears and put all my stuff on and
so
people, for her to do it, people will be fine. For me to do it, people are like, oh, Sister Pastor,
this is what I was
she's doing this, she's doing that. And so, does my life have to change?
Yes, it does. This is what I'm saying. The relationship with Christ, the whole point of that is that I'm willing to do anything for him, whatever he says to do. So if that means that I cut my hair off, okay.
Really?
Does that make sense? Yes.
No, the Bible's not saying that.
No. I'm saying for me.
That's not what the Bible's saying.
What I'm saying to you is, for me as an individual, I've come to the conclusion in my life that whatever God tells me to do, I'm going to do it. I should have died. I know that. So whatever He says to do, I'm going to do it.
Yes.
If I know God is saying this to me, I'm going to do it. So we had Isaiah. How many people in our culture right now would be okay with a guy walking around naked for a year? He'd be in jail the whole time. Like, put some clothes on, like for real. But and so it wouldn't work in our culture. That doesn't make sense. What I'm saying is the context drives. I don't know. I feel
we got
the principle.
In my Bible, it's kind of themed out, and it says freedom with responsibility. That's what chapter 8 is.
Exactly.
And I feel like that sums it up. We have freedom in God to move and eat and this and that, but we have to be mindful of the responsibility we have. And I feel like it's different in each individual case.
Yes.
We like to make a blanket. Let me not
Right,
wear earrings
right,
so no one
right.
will be a stunt. But it's individual situations
Exactly.
where there are times where we have neighbors that had an outdoor birthday party on Sabbath. Naeem and I can't say, oh, then we're mocking the Sabbath if we go in. And we're opening up a door with responsibility and our freedom to say, hey, neighbors, we come and supported your party. We're the Newmans. So that when we have grow group or whatever, they're not looking at us, no, you pull in your driveway every week. But if it's another SDA party, we're not coming to support that. You guys know better. It's the Sabbath. We're not coming to do it. So it's in each individual situation where you use your freedom with responsibility.
Is that what you mean by context?
Yes.
The situation.
Absolutely.
The situation
And
itself
it sounds like we're
determines
talking
the
about
actions.
situational ethics, and we are. Because that's what it's talking about. Paul was a rabbi, man. This guy was a lawyer. He would split hairs and you wouldn't even know they were split. He's making major points here. And I think a lot of that stuff we miss from context if we don't have it.
And the thing is, where did Paul's freedom come from? Because at one point in his experience, he was very right-wing legalistic.
He still is in some instances.
But think about him.
Paul is free.
Yeah, he's free to voice his opinion through his whole writing.
But listen what I'm saying, though.
I hear you. I know. I hear
When I
you.
say he's free, what he said, I become all things
Yes.
to all men that I may win some.
Yeah, exactly.
I can do whatever I want. That's what I mean by the freedom.
Yeah, I understand.
But that freedom came from a knowledge of what Jesus was all about. Because at one time he said, I was a Hebrew of the Hebrews, a Pharisee of the Pharisees. Concerning the law, I was blameless.
Yeah.
Okay? Now he's saying, I'm free to do these things. It's no big deal for me. At one point, it's guaranteed, when he was Saul, I guarantee you, he wouldn't have been eating meat offered to idols.
Right.
The principle is definitely there for us. But we're getting back to who he was talking to at the time.
Right.
I'm free because now I have a spiritual understanding of what this thing is all about. Getting back to what Sharika was saying earlier. I was exposed to Adventism through West Indian folks that you know about. In fact, his great-grandmother was called E.G. White.
Egg white?
1G.
Listen, I was basically told if I ate meat, I was going to hell. Guess how I raised it? Did you grow up eating meat?
No doubles.
Was any curry goat in
Put
your
the
house?
camera on me then.
Right? But now we are spiritually enlightened. Right? We don't go around eating curry goat in front of folks, but maybe you might have one on. The principle is freedom with responsibility.
Exactly.
But the freedom comes from being spiritually enlightened or having knowledge to understand what the freedom really is.
I do have a practical now question that I'm faced with. Freedom with responsibility. So I was talking to Jared earlier this week about a friend of mine who is bisexual, who is getting married to a woman.
Hold that.
Is she or he?
Hold it. Just to close this statement off before we go there, because that will transition us into our next conversation. Okay. I like that you brought that up, because after Paul makes the statement at the end of chapter 12, that's his very next statement in chapter 9. Mm-hmm. And when he goes down to the end and says, to the Jew I become the Jews, to the Gentile I become the Gentiles, it brings us to the point that Randy's making about the situation.
Exactly.
What I do in each situation may look different.
Yeah.
I'm not Jew with everybody.
I was told by some close friends of mine that I was wrong because I ate ham. We were traveling with my band to Indiana. We drove to Indiana. We were staying with these people. We were Adventists, but it wasn't an Adventist thing. And the lady, they had this huge house. We were staying in these lofts, and they had, I think, 6 kids, and they made this huge pile of ham sandwiches. And they were so happy that we were there. We had driven all night. We driven the whole day. It was like late at night, and we were like looking around, man, like, dang, man. And all of us are Adventists. All of us are like, and I was like, thank you so much. And I grabbed 3 or 4 of those bad boys and I crushed them because the relationship was more important at that time. They were not Adventists. They had no idea who we were or what we did. The woman had given us of what she had. We ate it. And people were like, man, you were wrong for that. Why would you need to witness to her about the truth? I was like, yo, we were at their house. They were hosting, the situation. Now, what I want, do I go out and order a ham sandwich? I don't want to eat pork. I have no desire to eat pork. I know what it can do to the human body. The question is, to many people, that is absolutely out of the question. Is that us being relevant or us being faithful?
Wow, that's awesome. That's an awesome question.
You're smart.
No, but it's a serious question.
Are you looking for answers? Or
Yeah,
I
I want to know the answer. I'm like, I want to know. Please
I
tell
think
me.
you had the answer.
It depends on the situation. It does. It
You
depends
did the
on-
answer already.
It depends on the relationship.
you did the answer.
you gave
Did
the
you
answer.
maintain the relationship?
Yes. Well, I didn't, but one of the you guys know Tim Nelson.
Yeah.
Tim is cool
You
with those
shouldn't have been in
people
the
to
band, first of
now.
all, playing an that's the first. So you put yourself in the back.
What?
What did he say?
You should look
He
at
was-
the
I'm just
yeah,
glad.
this-
I'm
this
just
is-
glad.
It was a Christian band, man.
glad
We
what
were
the-
playing for the pastor. It was the pastor's wife.
Was any weak folks around you when you did that?
And then you know what? I don't know.
They
I don't
didn't
know.
know.
No.
No.
Honestly though, like everybody in the band, most of the guys were all of us were Adventists. We grew up Adventists. Some of the guys were not strong in their faith. I don't know how that affected them, but at that moment, that wasn't. I don't know. That was maybe I was wrong, but I thought it's more important for me to accept this lady's hospitality. They're hosting us in their home. I know their kids probably were like, "Can I have some of those sandwiches?" Like, no, those are for our guests. That was the kind of vibe we got from the place. I felt like I would be doing a disservice to God by not taking what they had to offer me.
Was your question a real question?
Well, the reason I was asking is, you relevant or faithful. If you stayed there that night and never talked to them again, then
Right.
you really have to say, was it relevant? Was it worth it?
Right.
To make that compromise. But yeah, if a relationship grew out of it and all that, then I think you can say what Paul says, that because what he's saying is, I'm a Jew to I need to be a Jew. I'm
Right.
a Gentile to I need to Gentile. Why? Because I'm trying to win them to Christ.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess
if
Yeah.
you're
And I was in
So
the
what's your
same
ultimate,
purpose?
situation.
what's your
Right.
purpose? If your objective is
Right.
to win someone to Christ, and you're making a compromise along the way to win them to Christ, I would say that's relevant. If it's just because you're hungry and you're never going to see them again,
But what if
But
it's
I don't
paving
know-
the way for someone else? So maybe he never ever reaches back, but the next Adventist or whatever they come in contact with, there is like, we had one stay that left of all the ham sandwiches on our counter. We don't want, or remembers their situation with him and is more inviting and open, that it ushered in more light with someone else. So does he have to carry it the distance? Or is it up to him to just drop that seed of, I'm open, I'm whatever it needed to be to show you that I'm not rules and regulations, and someone
another
else
question.
coming in?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
It was much better than
was
mine.
it explained ever at all? My husband and I were in a similar
Right.
situation where they made this big vegetarian meal, and I ate I ate the soup, and I looked at Kelvin, and I was like, oh, he don't know, he don't remember. I was like, this is like laden with lard. This is laden with lard. And I just smiled, and I didn't tell him until later.
Oh,
But I
I
spoke
thought
to the
you found out
hostess. I was
about
like,
this
this
on the
is
show
really
too.
good. It tastes like, what did you season with? Oh, we typically don't eat that, but thank you so much. It was really good, and so on and so forth. So I made a note because we have a relationship with them, and we're talking about that was a decade and a half ago, and now she knows not to put lard in it.
Right.
You understand?
Right. Absolutely.
So, but at that time, I wasn't gonna be like, no, thank you. And then when I looked at my poor thing, he didn't even know. So I was like, I'm not even going to tell him until afterward, because it would have put a damper on the relationship when they did their best to make a vegetarian meal because he's vegetarian.
Now, some
get
would
it?
argue, as Sharika pointed out from her experience, that to win some, we should have told them about our dietary restrictions in order to win them.
But that's the beautiful
And that's
part
what
of
I
it.
did.
That's the
Remember, they
beautiful
made
part of reading
vegetarian.
Paul, because Paul's giving his ideas and his opinions on exactly what he thinks. So it's not necessarily gospel.
Oh.
Here we go. Now we hear it. He was waiting on
And
Wiki to
there
say
are going to be
that.
certain situations where
It was an opening.
You know
And
what?
there are gonna-
We
I've
might
been
as well
double
just
dutching
we
all
might as well
night.
just get rid of the New Testament.
Absolutely.
No, seriously.
No,
no. Let's not make it. Because you hard on my boy.
I am hard on him.
don't like problem.
But here's
I like Paul. That's my thing. I actually do like Paul. The problem with Paul is that it's written with just I thinks, and even to the point where he's like, this wasn't necessarily inspired by God, but
He just-
I would say,
Okay,
like,
that
he
was
said,
a lie.
I don't agree with. I'm like, so what?
But here's what we do know.
He slipped
I'm
in
just
his
saying.
way.
Here's what we do know. All scripture
Yes.
was given by
Yes.
the inspiration of
Oh,
God.
Which
now
is
we're back to
why
the
I have
Right,
to
hold on.
balance that.
Let me finish. I'll let you talk. And that scripture you talking about, of the 27 books in the New Testament, he wrote 13. Now, was it inspired or wasn't it?
Listen,
Wow.
I'm not willing to get into that discussion as far as that goes because I don't know if I want to go there.
Yeah.
All right? This is something that when I read Paul, I struggle with. Acts, I can see.
That was
We're
Luke.
good.
That was Luke.
Huh?
That was Luke.
Well, Luke, no, I'm just saying Acts. But also,
Right.
like, when you read, Luke.
Who wrote it, right?
Yeah. So when you go through Romans, I can see. When you get the First Corinthians and all that kind of stuff, it gets very opinionated. And to the point, like, I made some notes. Like, there's some things that contradict some other things in the
I
Bible.
don't disagree with you. That's not why I love Paul. Because he is opinionated.
Mm-hmm.
There's no writer of scripture who wouldn't brought his own input into his writings. It wasn't a divine inspiration that hit him to make him write. We studying Luke in this quarterly. All this stuff was done through research. All right. What I love about Paul is there's no other gospel writer that introduces us to what this salvation is all about other than Paul.
I agree.
But that doesn't take away his humanness. I don't agree with the brother getting rid of John Mark.
But what I'm saying is the only reason why I'm saying that is going back to kind of what was being said here. So it doesn't, like, there's no right or wrong in that situation. Like, people will take it and make it gospel.
Right.
My point is that there's no right or wrong. There's room, and he even writes it
It's
so that
reference.
there's room
Quick
Yeah,
question.
to be able to determine
Yes, reference.
where's your reference point.
Yes.
I have
exactly.
a question because this is absolutely related to what you said earlier. What is the reason that people argue over these small points? Why do they argue over the small points? They argue over the small points to hold one and say, I know this and you are wrong. Man, that is absolutely antithetical to everything.
Yeah.
What you said earlier about
I disagree.
the
I
kids
disagree.
at
I disagree.
school. No, the kids at school. I'm not saying this about you guys. In
No,
this
you said it about me.
conversation.
So
No. I'm talking about people arguing points of the law. Like, you're supposed to walk, and Paul wrote about this. You got to walk 4 miles. No, it's 5 miles, and the 5 mile guys have a club, and
But
they're
I
mad.
think
Like we do this.
But
like,
my thing is that I'm not
women's
even
ordination.
But I'm not even
gay
I'm not
marriage.
even trying to crack on somebody who's doing that. That's fine if that's what they believe God has called them to do. My thing is that's on you. That's. But
Right.
my thing is when you're looking at it from a salvation standpoint, those things aren't that big.
Right.
There's ultimately an idea that Christ is trying to get through.
Right.
And he's using Paul to get it to make the point.
But
And
I
certain
guess
things are salvific, and we can't just brush them underneath the rug, because then what happens is there's certain things that you suffer in and of yourself.
right.
There are other things that we suffer as a group. You know,
Right.
when God says don't do this, if you do not establish rapport with your fellow brethren, then you might end up like in Joshua, where God said do this. There's a few people who did the wrong thing, and the next battle that they went into, they all lost that battle. And it's like, what happened? And it wasn't even till afterward. Oh, that's a
But the
it wasn't till
salvific
afterward.
part.
Listen, it wasn't even till afterward God said, "I'm not helping you because you did something wrong." And they're like, "What do we do?"
No, but they didn't
What
do
we
anything
do?
wrong. This is the thing. What I'm my
No,
point
yes,
is
yes,
no.
yes,
What
they did.
No,
I'm
the
saying.
thing that they did. So what I'm saying is this: the only thing that's salvific in life itself is doing the will of God.
Yes.
That's it. So it doesn't matter what that will is, as long as it's from God, and that's what He called you to do.
That was my point
That's
about the naked
salvific.
guy. That was the point I was talking about, the naked guy. Everyone around that guy was like, he has lost his mind. We got to lock him up. Look, I'm offended because he's walking around naked. I have kids. I have children. I don't want my children seeing this naked guy. God was like, walk naked. I mean,
For a year.
Yes,
yeah.
it will.
So this is my point. I'm
Yeah.
supporting you. It's like I think the whole do not judge thing is like, don't even make a judgment about someone's walk, man.
That's not what
Just
Paul
support
says.
him.
Great segue.
That's not
Excellent
what Paul
segue.
says.
To the next
That was
part.
like-
Here we go.
This
Excellent
dude.
segue.
Okay.
1 Corinthians chapter 5.
Thank
You want me to
you.
put my question out there?
Hold on.
Quick couple questions. My question is 5.
1
Yes.
Corinthians 5. I'm going to read two
Verse
verses
5.
and then I'm going to let Sharika ask a question. All right? 1 Corinthians 5. I'm reading New Living Translation.
Which verse?
11 and 12. Again,
But
specific
let's make
situations.
the assumption that you read the whole chapter.
Yes, many assumptions you read the whole chapter. I mean that you are not to associate with anyone who claims to be a believer, yet indulges in sexual sin, or is greedy, or worship idols, or is abusive, or is a drunkard, or cheats people. Don't even eat with such people. It isn't my responsibility to judge outsiders, but certainly it is your responsibility to judge those inside the church who are sinning. God will judge those on the outside, but as the scriptures say, you must remove the evil person from among you. I'm going to pause right here to say to those watching, we'd like you to be a part of the conversation. You can join in the conversation by logging into the chat room and asking your questions there, or sharing your comments or sharing your thoughts as we go along. Or you can call the number that Din is putting up on the screen right about now. I think it's 914-205-5907. 914-205-5907. Call and be a part of the conversation. Sharika?
Can I add something to that real quick before you start? Because it starts in verse 5. Because I had a complete problem with this.
Okay, me too.
All right.
No.
So it starts in verse 5, and the background is that this dude's sleeping with his mother-in-law. Right? Verse 5 says... Sorry, I didn't mean to pick that up.
What happened?
Nothing.
That's that right.
It says...
I'm going to play this tape back.
Then you must throw this man out and hand him over to Satan so his sinful nature will be destroyed. All right? And this is where I go, like we were talking about he's changed and he's free. Because the reason why he's saying all this is because he's going back to Deuteronomy where it's telling him that, you take these people out and you stone them. Which I was trying to figure out, throw him out to Satan, what does that mean? So he's not only saying that, you shouldn't associate with them. He's saying disfellowship this guy by killing him. Answer the question.
Wow, that's really extreme.
We'll just pause there.
I just wanted to give, because
we
it
paused
helped
there.
me. Yeah.
Kevin, what was the chapter? Because I'm.
Is it
1 Corinthians 5.
Corinthians 5.
So
Man, I was.
I have a friend. She's a female. She's bisexual, and she's marrying a female. She has asked me to be in her wedding. Now, if I stand in that wedding as a bridesmaid, according to Paul, do I stand in the wedding or do I not stand in the wedding?
What, according to Paul, why?
What we just read.
What you was right.
What we just read.
Anyone who engages in sex, but
Well,
that means you
two
can't
things.
stand
Number
in
one,
the wedding of sexual immorality means you've engaged in a sexual act with someone outside of marriage, or you've engaged in a sexual act with someone who's within a marriage and you're not in that marriage. Now, unless you know for sure that person is not committing acts of sexual immorality, and which you may or may not know, you have to make your decision based on that. Because the problem is, we assume that homosexual people are having sex with each other.
homosexual are.
Right. No. What I'm saying is,
Gay people necessarily aren't.
what I'm saying, someone who's gay may not necessarily have ever had sex.
Exactly.
They may just say, I'm gay. The
No,
Bible
I
does
wasn't-
not
I
allow
wasn't
me to
focusing
say
on
that.
you saying-
So this
You're
is
saying
That's
this
what
is
she's saying.
you're saying
She's
the
saying
white
getting
person.
married.
But this is the
No,
thing.
I'm
So how
not
do we
saying.
qualify
I'm not
evil?
saying they're evil. I asked
So
you
how
if
do-
you
how do
are
we
Go
evil.
back to the
qualify that?
scripture. Go back to the scripture.
That's what I'm saying. Based
What
on
the-
what Paul is saying.
But what
This
Paul
is what my point is.
hold
How do we know
on.
that?
But what Paul says in the
If they're gonna get
scripture
married,
is
they're
that
gonna
he
have sex.
differentiates between believers and non-believers in the scripture. And I think he goes through and he talks about it's going to be very difficult not to hang around people like this who are non-believers because they're in the world.
Yes.
So he makes it clear there's a demarcation between people that are believers and people that are non-believers. He says, people, if you're doing this stuff in the church, if you're a believer, those are the people, and you're claiming to have a relationship with Christ, then those are the people that you kick out.
So are we okay if I were to stand in that wedding?
I have no
Well,
help
he
for
says
you.
this. He's this.
Or
look,
heaven. So,
in New King James Version, the same chapter, verse 9 and 10. I wrote to you in my epistle not to keep company with sexually immoral people. Yet I certainly did not mean with the sexually immoral people of this world, or with the covetous, or the extortioners, or idolaters. Since then you would need to go out of the world.
yes.
He's like,
It's impossible.
You can't miss it.
Well, he's like, really? Seriously? Like, if you
Right, that
have
was
people
verse
who
10,
you know
right?
are sleeping with each other in the church, you can't have that. But you can't go around and be like, you're sleeping with each other. And they're like, what are you talking about? I don't even know you.
It's not even
I'm
that.
from the church up the street. That's not going to help anybody.
So I guess the
Okay,
question to
okay.
answer your question is, what's the believer status of your friend?
That's a serious question.
Based upon Paul.
Okay. Write your letters to Jared, and he'll tell me. Okay.
Or RPC.
Okay. No, not RPC. I don't represent RPC here. I represent Shonice Mitchell here.
Yes.
That's not what the
When you are in a wedding, not you're at a wedding.
You're in the way.
When you're in a wedding, there have been times when a friend of mine would have been like, I'm getting married, and I'm like, that dude is crazy. He's crazy. I love you.
I'm not good.
I love you. And there's a point where the pastor says, if anyone, if anyone has anything else to say, I can be quiet in the audience as a looker on. But if I'm your bridesmaid, I am saying I am one of the people who will support you for the rest of your life in this relationship the way it stands. That's what you say when you're part of that. Some of us, we just go up because we want to bless a baby and it's so cute, and so we all go up. But when you stand, you're not just one of the church members. You are saying, I am going to love and support your family to help raise this child properly. I'm going to be an example. I'm going to help where I can help, etc. So, if you personally have no problem in your relationship with God and what He has instructed you to do, because we all want to make salvation individual and so forth, and the rules of God individual. But if you're saying you support a homosexual marriage, is that right or is that wrong?
But what we just read is based on whether or not the person is a believer or non-believer. So if regardless of how I feel about homosexuality or sexual immortality
Immorality.
or mortality,
That would be great too.
Great. I mean, sorry, I wasn't supposed to say that. But
I would love that.
Focus. Finish.
It doesn't matter how I feel about it. It boils down to what that person associates themselves with. So if she's a believer,
Yes.
then okay, I have what I'm hearing from the reading. If she's a believer, I don't need to be up there because that just she should know better, so on and so forth. But if she's not a believer, well, I'm just here to support the party, boo, and I should be okay.
And if you're watching the wedding because your friend wants you to be there, it's very different than if you're a bridesmaid and you're saying, I fully support this relationship.
Where does that come from? What rules are those?
That's different because it doesn't say that here.
I don't know.
I know. That's
what
what I'm
does it say there,
saying.
Randy?
But when you,
It says believer versus-
I'm saying the
I want
culture
to know what
of.
your basis of making that
He
statement
doesn't
is.
speak to. He doesn't
Okay,
speak to
I'm
how-
basing it on the culture
At the end
of
of the-
what are your bridesmaids and what are your groomsmen. These are people who are supposed to be by your side to support your first at the wedding and then throughout your marriage. These are the people who you're supposed to, they're your witnesses. They're supposed to be there for you. Times get rough, you can go and talk to them. They help encourage you. Don't cheat on your wife,
But
man.
see-
Don't do-
But this is my problem. And it goes back to what.
So
It
I'm
goes
saying,
back to.
yes, but culture
No.
does play into
Yes,
how
but
she
I'm saying-
relates to.
But that's the
But
point.
that's
how
So when you look at this, basically what he's saying, what Paul is saying here, that I'm taking from it is, you have two different mindsets. There are two bases from which you're making decisions. There's a worldly basis, which
Right.
does not
Yes.
include God, and you can't expect someone to do it from that
Yes,
perspective.
exactly.
And then there's a church basis or
Right.
religious basis that you're doing, and you have that.
Right.
In this situation, it once again is what Jared said. It depends on what the person's relationship, if it exists, with God. So if they don't have a basis of their relationship, and their basis of relationship is not under God, then we can't apply biblical principles to it.
And that's when you're
Right.
hanging out with me.
I
I can hang out with you. We can have dinner together. We can do this and we can do that. But do I support you? I love my sons. God forbid either of them becomes homosexual, right? Now, I love you. Your friend can hang out with us. Your friend cannot sleep in the bed in my house with you. No, because that's me supporting you doing what God said not to do.
If
You want to
your
do it in
son
your
is a
house?
believer.
I'm not gonna disown you as my child. I'm not gonna disown you as your child. I'm not gonna kill you per se, either. You get it?
But is your son a
But-
believer?
and my son claims to be a believer.
Then that's
That's
fine.
different.
That's a
That's
different-
fine, but if it's
that's
now-
the point.
now-
Based upon what Paul says, who
Now
I
let's
agree with
change
on
it.
this.
Now let's change it. Let's change it because I gave you that one scenario. What if Keenan says, you know what? I grew up in the church and y'all get me sick. This is not the relationship I want. Y'all judge me. Y'all look at me from the time I
Well,
was
he's not a
little.
believer.
I'm not down with the whole Christianity thing. Now, okay, he's not a Christian.
Not a believer.
He's not a believer at all. Do I let him? His friend can still come have dinner. His husband can still have dinner at my house because I'm going to be kind to you because I love God.
In the fictional
But-
world of where your son.
Don't
Right,
say
fictionally.
Don't
God
do that.
forbid.
Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't
No,
do that
no,
because
I
I
mean,
said
real, because
I said
you have to give
hopefully not, but you
scenarios.
never know. And so my prayer is not. But now that he's not a believer, can he come into my house and sleep with his husband in the bed that I'm paying? No, he cannot.
But they're
because
not his
that's
house.
against.
That's not our house.
No. Look, your point makes sense.
know,
Your
don't-
point makes sense.
You want to
Get the gist. Get the gist. Don't pick apart the semantics. Get
No, you
the
have
gist
to.
of
The semantics are
semantics
play. You
are what
can't.
we're
You can't
talking about.
compare
It-
apples
it
and
We're
is.
talking about the
oranges.
semantics. We're talking about the semantics of this, but your point is well taken. It makes sense. We're talking specifically to this. Here it says at the end of the verse, at the end of that whole chapter, verse 12. For what have I to do with judging those also who are outside? Do you not judge those who are inside? But those who are outside, God judges. That is all Paul says on the matter. He doesn't take us into the scenario, and I get it. I get what you're saying makes perfect sense to me. That's how I hope I would respond if that happened to my kid, who is not on the right. my fictional child. It doesn't right. But for all intents and purposes, but we're talking simply about that, and I think this is not super clear. I mean, this is confusing. For me, it's confusing.
I
think it's
saw
hard to
your
explain.
brain working
My-
out of
my
the corner
brain.
of my eye.
Because
And
I
I'd
don't
love
know,
to hear-
it seems I have to dumb things down for myself and just make life simple. So once again, what would be the goal, the objective of being in the wedding? Once again, if we're sticking with Paul's writings, I'm all things to all people. Why? So that I may win them to Christ.
To Christ.
I believe that your friend, if she's asking you to be in her wedding, she's obviously a good friend, will respect you to say, as a Christian, I don't support that. But if you feel like being in it is winning her to Christ, then I think that's something that deserves some definite prayer and see where God is leading and saying, hey, I need you to be in that wedding because she's getting close. And but to me, just on the surface, I would say no, and this is my reason why. And hopefully as my friend you would understand that.
And that's
That
the
makes
Wait,
sense.
wait, hold on.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Let's just move it. Didn't move the camera.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
huh?
sounds good, but for me, it seems like how many
And I'm
weddings?
facing the same exact issue, right?
Right, I didn't know we were going to go there.
I'm facing
We're facing the same situation coming out. We've been discussing it for a while. But
Wow.
I just want to come back to something like what you just said, babe. How many bachelor parties have groomsmen taken the groom out? No, or bachelorette. Watch the groom do something inappropriate and still stand up there the next day
mercy Jesus.
and say, I'm in agreement of this. The immorality that took place last night. Now, why is it such a, we need to pray and fast whether she should go and support this friend? But wedding after wedding, this happens. We watch
This is
something
my
happen
point.
and we stand up there as bridesmaids with a full face of makeup and a dress on
Girl.
and say, I support this. It's the same exact thing. You're saying to someone, I'm supporting you in a sin that I've seen, I know that you're doing, and you're
I
continuing to
don't
pray.
think that's the same.
Why not?
Because she's not going to have
Because
sex.
this
they're not gay.
person is hopefully not entering this marriage to live a life of bachelorette partying or bachelor partying. They went and hopefully they didn't sin at the bachelor party, but whatever the bridesmaids witnessed was a one-time hanging out with the girls, but this isn't going to be a lifetime of.
So the wedding date
sinning.
changed the character?
Yeah.
Whereas
I've
this
never.
person, this
100%
person
agree with
is
that.
knowingly entering into a lifetime that we would say of sin.
I've
See,
never
that-
been to a
that-
bachelorette party where
Oh.
we watched the
You
bride
ain't
have
good.
sex
Some
with
good
the
stuff that-
fireman. You understand?
With
so
what?
The fireman.
Say that again.
the
Yeah,
stripper,
yeah.
the stripper. Okay,
You never been to one with a stripper?
You have sex with the stripper.
Why
Okay,
am I
I
embarrassed?
didn't
I'm
hear that.
embarrassed. I'm just sitting there getting red in the face. Why am I even embarrassed? I'm like, oh my gosh.
We're thirsty for water, man.
but if that did happen, is it okay to say, okay, you can do this, but you can't do that? It's not. It's you're not condoning sin either way, you know. And then if you say, okay, you know, I condone you doing this sin, so I might as well condone everything else that you want to do wrong. The truth is, I have friends who have some of the same issues that I have, and so I can't hang out with you for this particular issue because you're just going to encourage me to do the same thing.
Right.
So I'm going to call a different friend when I actually want to change this issue, this sin, because we sugarcoat it too. This sin, and I'm going to hang out with that person. But with this person, I will hang out with you and do certain things that don't really entice me to sin. If you sin and I sin, that doesn't mean that I condone all your sins and you condone all my sins. There has to come a point where I can clearly say to you, no, we shouldn't do that. Even if we do it. I'm a grown woman,
Are we
and if I
talking
sin,
about
Believer
believers
or non-believer?
or non-believers,
but
or
the thing
believer
is,
and unbeliever. I mean,
But I
what are
don't,
we
does
talking
it
about?
matter?
And it's saying-
What you're saying, does that even matter?
it doesn't
Then what she's saying, I
matter
don't think it
because what I'm
matters.
saying is you don't either way you don't condone sin. You're just
Right.
not saying you're sinning. You know what I mean? If you're a believer, it's like, come on, we've been doing this for years, or you've been doing this for years. How can I help you get over this problem?
But
You know
then
what I
we have
mean?
the
If
text
you're a
that
believer.
says, get the splinter out of your own eye before you go to your brother. So here
And-
now you have the swing of the pendulum. Now, I'm not in any right to come and say you shouldn't have gone to that wedding, or I wouldn't have gone to that wedding, or I have no right to that because I have my hang-ups on my own things too, or what I should and should not do too. But then you have this text of Paul saying, get them. Throw them out, kill them.
Right. But he's talking about people in who?
Yeah, but so
He says about the brother.
Who are frauds?
so let me ask you
Who are
this:
frauds?
Are we?
And they're the
Do we want to
examples
keep
to
going
our
with this particular
children.
thing?
They're saying
Because I have to resolve it before we conclude.
Well, it depends.
Well, my thing is like the believer issue, and I needed clarification because I went back. I was reading it, and the reason why I had a problem with it is because when I went back to Matthew 13, where he talks about the wheat and the tares. Are the wheat and the tares in the church?
Yeah.
So they're all believers.
Yeah.
So
no, they're not all believers. They're all in the church.
okay, so they're
Self.
but they're claiming to be believers.
Yeah.
Right. Self-reported believers.
Yeah, which is
Not
what.
professed.
So essentially,
Professed.
this guy that slept with his mother-in-law was a self-professed
Professor.
believer
Yes.
too, and they kill. So I guess my thing is, Paul is saying take this dude out and kill him, right?
Okay.
Matthew's saying
Okay,
he
now
says
my
hand him
Bible
over to
didn't say-
Satan.
my-
That's
my-
not
Dude,
Satan.
when-
Satan.
when you go
mine
through,
didn't
when
say,
the
mine
King
didn't say
James-
go out and kill him. Mine didn't say
Go to
out
King
and kill him. I
James.
just allowed you to go to King James.
No, go to King James.
Just read it because mine said put him out. And if you look at the contrast is you guys aren't just looking at him and saying, oh, he did that. And be
Deliver-
quiet. You guys are being happy about it. You're being jovial and you're condoning it. Like you're outwardly agreeing with it. That's what my Bible's saying.
To
It's saying,
deliver
you are
such-
proud. You are proud that
Doesn't
he's
mean
doing
so.
this. You're happy like,
It
oh
says
yeah,
destruction
man.
of
destruction of the flesh.
No, wait. Destruction of the flesh could be let him continue to sin and get a venereal disease and die because of this. That may be
To
the way that
deliver
God
such
saved
an
him.
one to Satan for the destruction of the flesh, that the spirit may be saved in the day of the Lord.
Right. Maybe by getting syphilis, this guy will be saved. Leave him to his sin. For real. What else
I'm
is he
agreeing.
saying?
I'm agreeing
Like,
with you. It doesn't mean he's dying.
Yeah.
Elder Taylor, I see.
Okay, when you're left alone and
I'm gonna clarify.
Go ahead.
I'm agreeing with you. Andy.
So my only problem once again is, and I have to stay on it because so that his spirit may be saved in the day of the Lord. If you're kicking his behind out the church,
It's painful
how
for you.
in the heck is he going to be saved in the day of the Lord?
That was one of my questions.
And
That was one of my
that's a
questions.
really good question.
think
That's
about
why-
your friends and family. Think about your friends and family. Once you are separated, there's some of us who we have breakdowns if our mom leaves our dad. we have breakdowns, we have emotional trauma because there's a connection that we have, and we want to maintain that connection. When you disconnect, just like Jesus was in agony because he disconnected from his father, he felt disconnected from his father. When you disconnect from people and they feel like they're no longer part of you, there is a void in their lives. They might act like it's not, but there's a lot of people who are mean and nasty because they have a lot of voids in their lives because their dad left or their mom left or something happened, and they are just mean as anything to other people. But at some point, because of a disconnect of people who are doing evil, we say we can't condone it. I love you, but we can't condone this. You can't come and hang out with us and act like everything's right, and our children and grandchildren are looking at you and saying, "Oh, well, my uncle did that, so I can do it."
So why
that disconnect might bring you to a point that says, you know what? Was this really worth it? Was this really worth it? Losing our family and friends over this?
But why the
And that might bring you to a point where you're isolated and now you're with God. You don't get to sugarcoat your situation anymore.
Look,
Brother Taylor, you were saying?
I keep going back to my problem. What's the context here? Paul is not writing in isolation. He's writing to the church of Corinth. What was going on in Corinth?
Right.
A whole lot of everything.
With everything.
Prostitution was rampant. Sexual immorality was rampant. And condoned. Now he previously starts out by saying this is actually reported among you in verse 1. That there's sexual immorality going on with you that even the pagans are not doing. Right?
golly, that's terrible. That's what man. That's
I mean,
Let him finish, let him finish.
I think that's a little bit. First of all,
Let him
hearsay.
Let him finish. Let him finish.
Number one is hearsay.
Let him
He's not even there.
Can you finish?
Let him finish.
Sorry, I
Cameron.
finished. Have you ever got a report that you weren't there?
I can't go to court with it.
No, this is not about. This is
Just
not
finish,
about.
just finish,
This is
just
not
finish.
about court, Henry.
Just finish.
Then he says, "I wrote to you before, not to keep company with sexual immoral people." What was the issue here? There's a guy in the church, in good and regular standing, sleeping with his father's wife.
right.
Everybody knows it.
And nobody said.
They're condoning it
Rejoicing.
and rejoicing in it and making no issue of it. That's like Elder Newman doing the same thing at RPC.
Wow.
Now it's not about the individuals. It's about what that church doing.
Right. Right.
You got folks you hang out at the clubs with. Well, used to hang out at the club with. Be saying, man, what kind of church you got going on over there?
right.
Paul said, we can't have that. That's bringing reproach on the church of Jesus Christ. They're putting out to Satan. What he says, destroy the flesh so that the spirit can be saved. Now, because of your doctrinal understanding, you know there's no separation of the spirit and the flesh. We talking about the whole person, right? When a person is put out of disfellowship from the body, it's meant to be a redemptive act, not a punishment. Now, if he doesn't become redeemed, if he's not felt guilty or any remorse, that's on him and the Lord. That's like Judas and Peter. Both put out, both put.
And I completely
makes
understand.
sense.
My problem is when I go back and I read
The wheat and
about
the
the
tares.
wheat and the tares.
That's my point.
Is it
We-
is it consistent?
That's what I'm saying. We all
Christians.
wheat and tares right now.
Everybody's
Right
both.
now.
Yes.
Right now. I don't go around checking to Jared to see what he did last night, and he don't go around checking to you. This is obvious in public.
Okay, and that's my
Yeah.
question. So there's
There's a big
There is a
difference.
difference.
A big difference. That's we talking like current day events. Disfellowshipping a person.
Right. Right.
You confessing Jesus Christ. You believe that Jesus in the change of character in Jesus Christ. Yet you still doing all the stuff you used to do, and you have no remorse, no desire to change, no guilt, just doing it every day, every Sabbath in the church.
so the only thing that makes this different is the fact that it's out. In
It's a public act.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bringing public rebuke.
Okay.
See, it's not bringing rebuke on
God.
Randy. It's bringing rebuke on RPC.
Well, on God,
Well, what we're
And
talking
then
about,
by
but what he was
proxy, yeah,
talking
and
about
then
is the
goes
corporate.
because that's what
Right.
what
But
he's
what he was talking
about.
about is the church, the current church. Of course, it's on God,
Right.
right? But so when it's bringing public reproach, the church has to act publicly. It can't just ignore it and act like it doesn't exist. That was the issue here. Then he says, that all of these folks, immoral, extortioners, if they still practicing that as a lifestyle, you can't hang with them. You can't be hanging out with them kind of folks. Obviously, that is not what the Bible has in terms of how we interact otherwise, because Jesus went half the places he went to. You know, he hung out at Levi Matthew's house and they accused him of being a glutton and a wine bibber. What we're talking about is a public act with no remorse, no desire to change, acting a fool, and nobody doing anything about it in the church. Just, if you heard Pastor Graham was doing that right now, y'all just go to church tomorrow and just let it ride?
Is that rhetorical?
Yeah, no, that's it ain't rhetorical.
I think you're right.
No, that makes sense.
Does that help to answer the question that you had?
Well, in her terms of her question, it's a delicate situation, because that was the law of the leprosy, yet Jesus allowed lepers to touch him. Jesus went to Levi Matthew's house, and the publican was the most vile person in the times.
But Annie was a believer.
And hang out with a Samaritan. Okay, exactly.
Matthew was a believer.
So when it comes to, that's an issue of conscience. The church can't make a public condemnation on that. Okay, whether you go to somebody's wedding that the church itself might feel inappropriate, because that's an individual matter. You're not sinning. No more than Jesus saw. Getting back to eating, what do you think Jesus had at Levi Matthew house?
Some wine.
I'm not gonna get in there. That's full talk. But they accused him of being a glutton and a wine bibber.
No, they're not going to.
Okay, you don't get accused of that kind of stuff. You know, drinking mint tea. You know what I'm saying? So that's a delicate. That's a conscious issue, right there, in my view. What we're talking about in the Church of Corinth was not a conscious issue.
Yes.
It was obvious and blatant, and everybody knew it, and nobody did anything about it.
Context rules.
All right. Are you good with 1 Corinthians 5, or did you have anything else on that?
No, I'm good. I'm clear as water.
All right. So what we're going to do, because we're trying to stick to the 1 hour and now 1 hour and 15 minutes time
But we
frame.
started late.
All right. So we just over an hour. We're going to go ahead and close off with takeaways very quickly. And I'm going to start with Randy and come around to Kenneth.
Oh man, we got to.
Or should I start with Kenneth and come around to Randy?
That would help me.
Really? I'm always last. I like that. I had a few different takeaways. I'll only give one. It didn't come out of Corinthians. Shocker. Even though I got clarity tonight, that was good. Throughout the especially when the children of Israel, and I guess even before that in Genesis.
We ain't get to them yet.
Hold on, Kenneth. Take away from this discussion tonight. If there
We
are
need to
any.
stick with the discussion.
Oh, we'll stick with the discussion?
Yeah, you can't go to Joshua because we didn't do Joshua.
We ain't done, but we done. So we need to close.
Oh.
Brief.
So make it brief. Anything from tonight?
God is good.
Yeah.
All the time.
Concur.
Okay.
Nothing from tonight.
Context.
Okay.
We have to be aware of those around us and what we do.
Sharika. No.
Just say context. That's what
No.
God's good.
All the time. Okay. Continue to grow in a relationship with God so that it's very clear how you should react, how you should behave in front of certain people, and how you should react to other people.
Freedom is costly.
Yeah, unpack that.
Yeah, like you can't.
Well, yeah, unpack that a little bit.
Like, you can't leave. You don't leave on that.
Evidently, y'all wasn't listening.
I got it.
You got it?
Yeah.
You got it,
Has
right?
responsibility.
No.
Yeah.
I didn't hear it.
What she said.
Yeah, freedom has responsibility.
Knowledge. What she said. Knowledge comes with responsibility, and freedom comes with responsibility. But I didn't want to use her term, but I was stealing from her.
Boring.
No, I stole.
Oh, okay.
But it's true.
Okay.
It costs you self-denial.
Yeah.
That's better.
I like that.
I like that too. It's more like I gotta think more about my responsibility, and instead of just enjoying my freedom.
I'm thinking about what Naeem said about the ultimate goal. What's the purpose? Like, what's the reason we're doing whatever it is we're doing? Because that ultimately determines how that will be perceived, not only by ourselves but by God. Like, what is God? How does God view what I'm doing, what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking? Can I look at Him and say, I'm proud of this right now? Because I believe I'm fully in Your will. If I'm not, am I able to do that with all the things I do every day?
All right. My takeaway was that each situation is different, and you can't have a blanket
Exactly.
guideline. You can't have a blanket rule or guideline for everything. Each, situational ethics was the term that was used. I don't necessarily like it, but it is the best thing I heard tonight that captures, what I understand that to mean. If you're watching and you only saw the end of this, you have to go and play the whole thing over to understand the context. Context. All right. So that's it for tonight. We want to encourage you to continue drinking up in the Word. We're on again on the first first Friday night in May. Hopefully, prayerfully, we'll have the pastor join us. He agreed. His calendar is free. He put it on his calendar, and hopefully we won't have anything that gets in the way of that happening. So we're inviting you to join us. We are going to linger a little bit because we still have a little bit more to talk about. But if you'd like to, you can stay on. If not, have a good night, and we'll see you next time.
Drink up.
Drink up.
Water when I'm thirsty. Drink.
This is water for the thirsty.
Water for the thirsty.
Water for the thirsty.
Water for the thirsty. Drink up. Drink up.
Drink up. Hashtag Instagram, Facebook. We all there. Follow us. Tweet us. I have a mic on right now.